Good afternoon, Om Shanti, and welcome back to everyone. So I hope everyone had a little rest and some fresh air maybe, and ready for the last stretch. So we're back to our last and
Stretch.
the last stretch. And so this is our third session of our Attitude That Heal, the Choice to Change retreat. And so for this session, we've actually heard quite a bit. We've heard from the first session, which is about awareness and how that impacts our attitude. We heard about the subtle energy of thoughts and attitude and the impact of that. And now we're going to hear from Joan and Susan on acting versus reacting. And so our facilitators, first of all, is Kinnari Murthy, and Kinnari is going to be sharing with us for the first half an hour on a segment of meditation. And Kinnari is a cardiology research coordinator at Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia. Kinnari was trained and practiced as a medical doctor in India, but is now doing research here. She is a Raj Yoga meditation practitioner for over 20 years. And then we have Joan Vitello, and Joan is a registered nurse, a PhD RN. She is the Dean and Professor of the Graduate School of Nursing, University of Massachusetts Medical School in Worcester, Massachusetts. And thirdly is Susan Doughty. She is an advanced nurse practitioner, and she is adjunct physical clinical faculty in family nurse practitioner program, Cinnamons University. And so we're going to be here from these three individuals this afternoon. But before we go into that, we will be having, as usual, a little musical rendition that's going to take us into the session. And Kala is going to introduce to us the song and the singer. Her name is Kristen Hoffman. So Kala, would you like to tell us about Kristen and her song?
Yes, Kristen Hoffman, who some of you might have heard of. She is a lovely singer, but that describes very little of her. We've come to know her from Peace Village programs, and the best way I can describe her is she's a spontaneous soul singer. So I think what she spoke to me, we really wanted her to be here in person, but she couldn't make it this time, hopefully another time. But she did want to convey this, that, whenever she creates a song, and it is spontaneous, quite a lot of it is very aligned to what we've been talking about. She's, many times in nature doing her creation. And she wanted us to know that, her song that she creates, the music that she creates, is very non-local. It's not limited to the time she's creating. She knows many will listen to it, but she projects, very, very pure intention all over. And you can actually feel it from her singing. I don't want to say too much, but she is a lovely addition to our program, I think, to have, even though digitally. We're going to watch her.
And her song is Love.
Love and Gratitude. Love and Gratitude.
to fall. And when we lose the call, there's nothing more to do than call on you. Love and gratitude. When we forget to see our soul's deep mystery, there's nothing more to do than call on you. Love and gratitude. Love and gratitude. My infinite love and gratitude.
Kinnari? Ah, there you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. That was such a beautiful start of the session. We've just been building from morning till now on the theme of attitude. And I was wondering and thinking about this topic, acting. We're acting throughout the day. We wear different masks, we wear different hats, play different roles. And we get so many scenes and opportunities throughout the day to enact. And different scenes activate different things, to different way to act. I was thinking of a story. Once upon a time, there was a sage who wanted to attain very high level of meditation. And he takes his, that round boat, and he starts rowing the boat on a huge still lake, and goes to the center of the lake and says, okay, I'm going to meditate now. I'm going to attain that perfection in meditation, and goes into that, closes his eyes and goes into meditation. As the days passes by, after a couple of hours, it's a still lake. Slowly he feels the waves rocking the boat. He says, okay, something is coming nearby. And as time goes by, the waves become larger, bigger, and boat starts to rock further. Now it's becoming really, really, really big. And he can feel and sense that something is coming towards him. And then there is this flood of thoughts in his mind. They can see I'm meditating. I am alone. I came to this place for quietness. They could have gone, it's a huge lake. They could have gone in any other route. Why are they coming towards me? All these thoughts. I believe he's trying to meditate. And then it's a boat, comes and touches his boat. And the moment it touches the boat, his mind is filled with a dictionary of words that he probably wants to teach the other boatmen on how to row his boat and where to row. And when he opens his eyes, what does he find? That it was an empty boat. It was an empty boat, lost its way, and it just happened to come on his way and touch his boat. And in that 1 second of realization, that clarity when it comes, the flight of thoughts, the flood of thoughts that he had calms down. Changes his awareness, his attitude changes, his perception changes, his behavior changes, ... his action changed. The moment when we are not aware that the boat is empty, we act like victims. We start to defend, we can blame, and this doesn't get better. But when I'm aware that the other boat is empty, I can look at it in so many different opportunities, so many different ways. I make harmony with it. Okay, I'm in peace with it. Okay, now what I can do? That awareness shifted both of it, both the response. The stimulus is the same, but the responses were different. Today is October 3rd, and yesterday was October 2nd. And in the world, it is now recognized as the International Day of Nonviolence. And it's dedicated to, I'm sure all of you, majority of you know, dedicated to the birthday of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. And why was he recognized and why is it dedicated as a day of nonviolence? For decades, for centuries, the country India was trying to get its freedom from the rule of the British by battle, by fight, by different ways of fight. And there was this one man
in the world and in our lives over the past few months.
Okay. Okay, all right. And who wanted to take a different approach. It's the same stimuli, same scene, same scenario, and he decided to go differently, think differently. And his perception, his attitude, he chose a different route to the same problem. And what was the ultimate, what happened ultimately? The country got its freedom. The result was that. Right? So the stimuli would be the same, but from the space we come, from which space we respond, the which space I act makes a difference. So what is acting? If I may ask Sister Marilyn to share some slides. What is acting? We all are, well, of course, that sage was definitely acting. He was definitely not meditating. You must have got that by now. But what is acting? Acting is responding from a state of that fullness where I'm in total control. You can hit next slide, please. Next, yeah. When I, the being, the inner being is in total control of the response. There is a difference between the actor and the role the actor is playing. The separation is very, very evident. I'm total in control of my responses. Whereas reacting, you can click. In reacting, I'm under control. I'm subservient to the scene. I'm subservient to the drama. I'm subservient to the people. One, I'm the master, and on the other, I'm the subservient. Can we click again? In acting, I'm aware of the big picture. The moment the person opened his eyes, he saw the big picture. He was not limited for his assumptions. You can click again. You can click 2-3 times and go. Whereas in reacting, there is pre-assumptions, pre-notions. I'm assuming, I'm presuming, I'm colored, all those things. Whereas in acting, it comes from a space of understanding, accepting. Whereas in reacting, when I'm unaware, when that clarity is not there, how am I? What is the state of being? I'm stressed and I can be anxious. All different emotions can arise. You can click. The moment the sage was aware, he went back to his self-respect. He calmed down, he centered himself and stabilized in his self-respect. And from that space, he operated. He must have laughed. He must like, oh, what an absurd thing that in this big lake, all the way that empty boat could find was me. He could laugh about it the moment that realization happened. Whereas in reacting, it's coming from the space of ego. What is ego? An attachment to a false identity. I'm attached to the roles that I play. I'm attached to the mask that I wear. right? So these are some of the differences. You can click further. Mhm. An actor with that awareness is detached. There is detached involvement. Whereas in reaction, I'm totally involved in the scene. I'm into the scene. When you zoom out, you can see the bigger picture. But when I'm involved too much, I can't see. I just become, may not be even one dimension. It gets foggy and confused. Next slide, please. There is clarity, there's confusion. You can go to the next slide. You can click 2-3 times. Yeah. When I'm coming from that inner space of true self, there is scope for improvement. I can, okay, I understand this is the scenario and I can change, I can make changes. But when I react, there is only regret. I can only be sorry. Oh, I just didn't know that you had such a bad day. I didn't know that you were late because of this reason. There is a scope of improvement. There is understanding on one side, and the other side, I was judgmental. I was reacting, and I could have said something. I could have done something where later I could just regret and not make harmony. You can go to the next slide. One gives strength, there's power, and the other definitely drains my energy. There's weakness in it. Keep going. Yes. In that acting, when I come from the truth, my inner truth, when I see the whole scene in the full picture, there is what emerges is gratitude. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for whatever I have, whatever scene in the drama I'm playing. I'm grateful for it. But when I react, what is the mindset? I'll only blame, I can only complain, and I'll find fault. That's the chatter that goes on inside. So I can choose how I want to act. Next, please. So trying to connect the story and the theme together. When I, the being, come from that inner truth, when I operate from that inner space of total gratitude, what emerges, I choose, my attitude changes. No, there are hundreds of options that I have. When I'm open, my eyes are open and I see the empty boat, or I assume everybody is an empty boat. Whomever I meet, whomever I interact, whatever scenes in the drama that come on my way, if I can think, this is an empty boat. What do I mean by that? I can't control that boat. All I can control is my boat and how I can go, where I can go. Instead of blaming the scene, the people, and the situation, if I assume or take that notion, okay, this is an empty boat, because I know through my life, people have been sharing from morning of their 40, 50, 60 years of experience that the only person that I can change or I can have control on is me, the being. So when I know that I am in charge, I am in control, then there is hundreds of options that's available to deal with the same situation. Then I can choose how I want to act. That is where the attitude emerges. When I know I'm independent, I'm in control, the attitude that emerges from within is of faith, of confidence, resilience, peace, harmony, acceptance, and more. And with that attitude, I know I have the ability to change. I have the ability to change my response, how I could have acted before. I can see the 3 aspects of time. Okay, the consequence of my action, and that's why I've written like the past, present, and the future. I can look at it and then respond. You can take the slide away. Thank you for sharing. So the takeaway is we're all actors playing different roles. I'm not the role. And we all as an actor have the ability to choose our response. And every action has a seed. You know, we call it as root cause analysis. And the seed is that inner truth. Let's take a few moments of reflection before we dive deeper into this topic with Joan and Susan. Take a few moments to reflect. You can have your eyes open or closed. I will not be judgmental. You will be a very good meditator. Just take a few moments. Sit comfortably wherever you are. And as you settle down, on the screen of your mind, if you can see yourself as this beautiful actor, that source of light that you are. And emerge all the roles that you play through the day. The role of a father, mother, physician, caretaker, provider, all the roles that you play. These are all the different masks that we wear. And the different hats that I play my role with. And let me play each role from that inner truth that you are a being of peace, love, compassion, and care. Any scene in the drama, I am in control. I have the ability to choose. I have the ability to choose to feel and to respond. I'm not a victim, but I am in control of my inner world. Feel that peace. Filling your mind and the entire being. With that sweet, silent peace, where every thought, every word, every feeling that we create comes from the true space of love and care for everyone. hold that silence and peace for a moment. And feel that you are peace. You're a being of peace. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti and Kinnari, that was just beautiful. Thank you. So I'm Joan Vitello, and I have the pleasure, true pleasure and honor of sharing the next hour with Susan Doughty, who I've known, I was just reflecting on for a good 25, 30 years now. And I always get such joy and meaning in presenting with her. So we're looking forward to really enjoying this session with all of you. So Susan and I are going to be a little bit more evidence-based in this presentation. We're going to bring in some of our favorite books, and we're going to bring in some of the latest research that we're aware of. And I want to really thank Javi, Shri Tank, Carol, and Selena, because you actually made our jobs a lot easier this afternoon, because all we have to do is kind of build upon what you've already shared with our folks. So could I have my first slide, please? Do I need to share my screen? Okay, thank you, Kinnari. Kinnari, by the way, you were outstanding, and you really helped frame what I'm going to say. Could I have the next slide, please? So what is acting and versus reacting? Kinnari gave you some great examples. We are all actors on the stage of life. As she was talking about all the acting that we do, I'm thinking, how many roles do I play in my own life? And it's countless. I mean, I'm a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. I'm an aunt, a sister. I'm a wife. I'm some friends. I'm a faculty, I'm a dean, I'm so many different acts I play. And I often say that my true self is who I am when no one's looking. So what is acting versus reacting? When we talk about acting and reacting, we're talking about really our thoughts that lead to our attitudes, that lead to the habits that Carol mentioned. Selena mentioned it takes only 3 to 6 weeks to make these attitudes become habits. It's really these thoughts, and the thoughts can be either positive or negative. My background, I have a background for the last 23 years. I've been studying emotional intelligence. So I'm going to talk about some of our emotions as well. So we can have positive as well as negative thoughts. Our feelings are more that inner feeling, that inner emotion. We don't usually display our feelings. Our feelings are inner, our internal state. Our emotions are what we publicly display. Could be happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, surprise, whatever. But we manage our mind in 3 ways with our thoughts. We let certain thoughts just be. We let certain thoughts go. And we let certain thoughts in. So we do this 3 different ways. We let the thoughts just be. And that's usually when we're in a state of contentment. We may want to let them go when we're feeling not so safe, and I'm going to get into safety in a moment. And we may want to let more in, as Carol was saying, use that spirit of discovery and curiosity. We may let new thoughts in when we discover things about ourselves or about the world around us. Now, how we feel and act is really determined by 3 different things. The first thing is, what are our challenges that we're facing today or at the moment? What's the vulnerabilities that these challenges are grinding on? How do they make us vulnerable? So challenges and vulnerabilities are one of two of the three ways. The third way we feel and act is through our inner strengths. And Kinnari mentioned about that inner being. Those inner strengths really have give us the chance to meet those challenges and really protect our vulnerabilities. So I'm going to speak more about those as I go through. Could I have the next slide, please? Most of what I'm going to say and most of what I've already said is in this great book by Rick Hanson, and I would really recommend this. I am really very much, as I said, into emotions and emotional intelligence, but I'm also into neuroplasticity and the new brain science of contentment, calm, and confidence. This book is Hardwiring Happiness, and it's been on the New York Times bestseller list. I actually, because I've loved this book so much, I actually made it available to all of my faculty and staff over the summer because they've been struggling with COVID, as I have. We're all human beings, and we all we all screw up sometimes and get angry when we really shouldn't, because we're all human. And so I often reflect on this book, and I'm going to share with you some other things that come from the book. In this book, Rick Hanson says that we need to be mindful and stay present. Now, didn't you hear about all of this today from Harvey, from Carla, from Shritang, from Carol, from Selena? So all I'm doing is bringing it all together today. And Rick Hanson reinforces it by saying it's really important to stay present moment by moment, really taking things in. And that our mind really takes shape from what our thoughts rest upon. And then the brain takes shape from what the mind rests upon. So our brain really is a product of what our mind has been thinking. And so what you pay attention to, your thoughts, are what really shapes your brain. And so if you really pay attention to the positive things in life, you're going to have a more positive personality. If you pay attention to the more negative things in life, the anger, the disgust, the fear, you tend to look through that glass as being half empty. So as Carol mentioned about gratitude, if you want to develop more gratitude, what do you have to do? You have to feel more gratitude to develop the gratitude. Next slide, please. In this book, Rick Hanson mentions that we have three core needs. Could I have all three, please? The first one is safety, and safety can be personal safety, physical safety, our environmental safety, our social safety, and in certain, with certain audiences. Safety is really important here, and Harvey has always stressed this with me. You can't think about changing or choosing to change if you don't feel safe. So safety is the most important thing. And I think of the emotion with safety is peace. When you feel safe, you're at peace. The world around you feels at peace. That's probably not the case these days with the world around us, but we can choose to feel peace. I choose to feel peace, even though it's crazy around the world. I often try to choose peace. Satisfaction is the second core need, and that is both inner and outer satisfaction. And I think of satisfaction being contentment. When I'm fully satisfied, I'm contented. So we have peace, contentment, and then connection. Connection is with yourself and feeling that love with yourself, feeling that connection with others and the love for others, feeling that connection with the world, and also feeling that connection with the divine. When you feel that love, you really feel connected with the divine. Could I go on to the next slide, please? Because these core needs are really operating in 3 different ways. They operate by helping us avoid harm, approaching rewards, and attaching to others. So think about safety. If we're trying to be safe, we're going to avoid harm, are we not? And if we want to be satisfied, we're going to look for rewards to make us feel satisfied, approaching rewards. And if we want that connection, we're going to start attaching to others. We'll attach to the divine. We'll attach to ourselves. And these systems actually help us manage to meet those challenges and vulnerabilities by avoiding harm, approaching rewards, and attaching to others. And ironically, if you looked at how our brain developed, and I told you I really love neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, our brain developed actually first by avoiding harm, and that came from the brain stem, and that's where the vagus nerves, for those of us who are medical, the vagus nerve branched out from the brain stem. Then approaching rewards is really from the subcortex, and that's where the whole CNS, the central nervous system, has evolved. And then the third area of attaching to others is the cortex area. So we use our brains as a whole to accomplish our aims of avoiding harm, approaching rewards, and attaching to others. These systems actually can be running at the same time. So I'm going to give you an example of how they could be running at the same time. We go out to dinner with my partner, with my husband. That's attachment. I'm attaching to him going out to dinner. I'm ordering dinner and I'm looking for the reward. I'm anxious for whatever I've ordered. That's approaching the rewards. But I'm going to skip dessert. And that for me is avoiding harm because I don't want to gain any more weight because I'm into that COVID-19. So these 3 systems are really working simultaneously. We may be driving and we avoid a pothole because we want to get to go to a conference that we've been really looking forward to and seeing people we haven't seen before. That's attaching to others. We've avoided harm and we're approaching the rewards of learning something at a conference. So all of these are really being done simultaneously. We're avoiding harm, approaching rewards, and attaching to others. And we do that so that we feel that peace, contentment, and love linked to safety, satisfaction, and connection. These are all tied together. Now, Kinnari talked about acting and reacting, and I'm going to talk about that momentarily. But in his book, Rick Hansen further differentiates this as being in the responsive mode when you're acting and the reactive mode when you are reacting. He says the responsive mode is green. Think of it like the green light. You can go. You're in control, okay? You can hit that gas and go. When we're in the reactive mode, we're in that red zone where we have to put the brakes on and we're not in control. We're almost out of control sometimes when we react. So when our brain is not disturbed by threat or loss or rejection, it's really in the responsive mode. And I like to think of it in those 3 emotions that I mentioned: peace, contentment, and love. When we feel peace, contented, and love, we are truly in that responsive mode. Next slide, please. So all of these things really have to do with our inner strengths. Our inner strengths really help us choose between acting and reacting, choose between the responsive mode and the reactive mode. These inner strengths, we're not born with these. These develop over time, and it takes time to develop these inner strengths. Next slide, please. So what are these inner strengths? They're like supplies that we carry in that backpack, that we make our way down that winding and twisting and roads of life, when we we come to a crossroad and we can either take a left or a right. These are the inner strengths that we carry. They're stable traits. They don't change usually. They're our positive mood, our integrity, our determination is one of our inner strengths. Common sense. We've been talking a lot about self-awareness. That is an inner strength that we develop over time by being reflective and also being honest with ourselves. In order to be truly self-aware, we have to be honest with ourselves. And sometimes we have to really be so honest, it hurts sometimes to be that honest about ourselves. Also, an inner strength is inner peace. And I also think it's faith. When you have faith and you believe in the divine, you develop that inner strength. So we grow our inner strengths through positive experiences, which is really the way we hardwire our happiness. Next slide, please. So acting, and I'm taking a little deviation from what Kinnari says, is responding by choice from that underlying peace, contentment, and love when our core needs are met, when our safety needs are met, when our satisfaction needs are met, when our connection with others are met. On the other hand, reacting is responding by inclination towards defensiveness or anger or self-criticism. I know that one time I gave a presentation when I was down south going for my master's degree in Birmingham, Alabama. And I have this very Bostonian accent, and I was talking about cardiovascular topic, and I had to keep mentioning the heart. And I got on an evaluation that people couldn't understand what I had to say, and they wish I didn't speak because they couldn't understand me talking about the heart. I was crushed. I almost thought I would never speak again in public. And I had a faculty member who came to me and said, stop it. That was one out of 224 people. She said, stop it. She said, look at all the other good things that people had to say. But that's where self-criticism and our own vulnerabilities can get the best of us. So vulnerabilities to anxiety, we focus on losses and we don't see all the gains that we have. And we do get to choose. Kinnari said it so beautifully, and actually Sue's gonna build on what I have to say when we talk about we have the freedom to choose how we wanna think, hope, and dream, and she's gonna build on that in a moment. But as human beings, and Carol mentioned this too today, we tend to wanna go to the negative. I did with the evaluations I got. I went to the negative. We tend to have a negative bias as human beings. We're human. As I said, sometimes we screw up. I screwed up this summer, and I ended up having to apologize to somebody very close to me. I was a real jerk. But as I reflect on it and I say, why was I like that? I was under so much stress this summer. I was trying to get my faculty, the staff, and deal with my learners who are really thrown for a loop with the whole George Floyd issues. My faculty were exhausted. Everybody, and I was trying to be that person with the emotional contagion. I was trying to be upbeat and whatnot, but it was tearing me down inside. And I took it out on somebody that I loved very much. And I was a real jerk. And I ended up having to apologize sincerely and authentically when I felt I could. And I didn't want to make excuses and say I was under pressure because I hurt somebody. So we can all be jerks. We can all screw up. We're all human. And it's how we handle that, how we choose to handle that, that makes us who we are. Next slide, please. So in Rick Hanson's book, uses this acronym called the HEAL approach. And the HEAL approach is the key to hardwiring happiness for all of us. And I love this because I've been doing this for years. The H is to have a positive, I should have put positive experience. It's to have a positive experience. E is to enrich that positive experience, and I'm going to go into more depth over all of these. A is to absorb it, and then L is to link the positive and the negative in your mind. But this is optional, and you really shouldn't do this if you're in a very negative mindset. You can only do this when you're really in a neutral mindset. So having a positive experience, how can you do that? Well, think about something you're grateful for, a friend, a situation that you felt really good about, or something you accomplished. And enriching it, you're going to stay positive for at least 30 seconds. Now, this isn't like meditation. This is going to be very intentional, but it's very quick. You're not going to spend 5, 10, or 15 minutes doing this. This is in sort of 1 or 2 minutes. You're going to stay positive for at least 30 seconds and open your mind. Sense it coming into your entire body. That's the enriching it. And then the absorbing it is to sense that this positive experience is actually sinking into your fascia, as Carol mentioned. That's why I love being the last speaker. I can link all of this information to others that have so beautifully articulated along these lines. Then the link is to take that positive experience that you've enriched and absorbed, and then link it maybe to something a little negative, something that you don't want it to hijack. If you think of the negative, sometimes people get hijacked, and you don't want that to happen with the L. So you may just want to stay with the link, that positive, and stay with it for another 30 seconds to make it that 1 to 2 minutes. So it's called the HEAL process. And we can do this by savoring a delicious meal, enjoying good times with friends, being in the flow. Every day we should look for chances to let good experiences sink into us, because we have the choice. We can choose to do this. And this is where I think the most positive part of the HEAL process should be done at night. Right before you go to bed, think of something you're grateful for. Have that experience. Then enrich it. Think of it, sensing it all over your entire body, because we know from the molecules of emotions that we feel this through our fascia. So enrich it, see it going in, and then absorbing it through the fascia. Sensing it going through all your body, that's the enriching, but actually absorb it, take it in, and then link that positive with the negative. Okay, I have completed my portion of this, and now I'm going to turn it over to Sue Doughty, and then we'll entertain questions right after Sue is done with her portion. So Sue, it's all yours. You're on mute.
The backdrop of all that has been discussed today thus far is very well articulated in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about the freedoms that we have. And he was, remember, in a concentration camp. But he was able to come to this awareness and then put it all down on paper after he was released. We have the freedom to think, hope, and dream, regardless of the circumstances. And as my sister said, Carol said earlier, I'm dreaming of a new world that we're emerging into. And what Sri Tank said, remember, or Harvey said, the growth comes in the dark, and we're in the womb of a rebirth, I think, in our culture. That's how I choose to think and dream and hope. And we also have the freedom to choose how we respond to a given situation, a person, or event. And that takes practice, and that's what I'm going to be talking about through the rest of our session. But the choice and how we respond will determine our behavior. As Selena says, our thoughts are one thing, our behavior is quite another. Next slide. And here it is, as Selena said earlier, between stimulus and response, there is a space to choose our response. We have that freedom to choose. And Pema Chodron has also said it. Many of you know her work, When Things Fall Apart, and other books. She says, when we pause, allow a gap, and breathe deeply, once again, breathing out, breathing in, we can experience instant refreshment. Suddenly, we slow down, we look out, and there's the world. Next slide, please. Would you bring all those up, please? Rick Hansen, in his book, talks a lot about how is it that we can take in the good, as Joan says. And he talks about how the brain is hardwired for survival, and that the brainstem and the subcortex have less flexibility or neuroplasticity than the cortex. So when we think about our experiences, especially unpleasant experiences like the pandemic and the sorrow and the hardship and the anger and the grief and the things that are going on around us, and many of you are experiencing in your day-to-day practice. We've lost so many souls on this planet. It's no wonder our moods darken, our anxiety builds, and we start to feel inadequate. Many healthcare providers have said to me, what's the point? What's the use? So, or many of us have experiences that aren't positive from childhood. Adverse childhood experiences is a big focus of research right now. But the point is, negative material in our brain is like a strong current, and that's our survival mode. It tugs us toward that reactive, that red light response that Joan was talking about. And Hansen uses the imagery of Teflon versus Velcro. And the negative experiences are like Velcro. And what we have to learn to do is have our brain use our experiences in more of a Teflon way. Take in an experience of growing good thoughts in our mind as our brain takes its shape from what the mind rests on. And in fact, we develop new neural circuits depending on what our synapses and our neurons are experiencing. Take in the good, and that activates a positive experience that we can install in our brain that allows us to bring it up then. So next slide. Viktor Frankl reminds us it's about freedom. We have the freedom to think, hope, and dream. We have the freedom to choose how we will respond in a given situation. And our choice in how we respond will determine our behavior. But this involves preparation. It involves being centered. And we've heard lots of strategies about how to be centered through rest and meditation and yoga. It involves getting out in front of a potential conflict and pre-planning. How might I respond in this situation so that I can allow myself then to move in the direction that I want to respond? If I'm going into a relationship with an interaction with a patient who I've had some conflict with in the past, I can choose how I go into that interaction by pre-planning how I want to be. I can't control how the patient's going to be, but I can control how I want to be. And that means I can breathe, I can center myself, I can ask Source to speak through me from my center and keep my ego out of it. And I can listen not only to what the patient says, to what the patient doesn't say. Next slide, please. So, and please bring them all up. Our ability to choose requires practice. Managing our thoughts and being willing to manage our thoughts, not feeling the victim of our thoughts, but knowing that we can manage our thoughts, feeling that power. Noticing how we feel as a result of that, of our thinking. I've met people who don't have names for their feelings. And so I've encouraged them to get some help in terms of noticing how their responses are, and then putting names on that. Relating to our experiences, both positive and negative, in a way that Joan taught us about how do we reinforce the responsive mode and let go of the reactive mode. And then taking the time to incorporate positive experiences, not only into our brain, but into our fascia, as my sister says. As Carol says, we need to embody our experiences rather than just having them be a thought. Next slide. So, one strategy that I use and that Hansen reinforces in Hardwiring Happiness is the sequence to engage my mind. If I see something going on that might be particularly distressing, I try to remove myself from it, almost stand up on a balcony and look at it as if I'm experiencing a movie, a grade B movie most of the time. And that allows me then to begin to let go of the negative aspects of what I'm observing and be more accepting and non-reactive with the question, isn't this interesting, as Carol said? Shifting it away from self-judgment into, isn't this interesting? And then that frees me up from that feeling of inadequacy or vulnerability to allow pleasant feelings and the memory of pleasures and good intentions to emerge. As Joan says, if we can incorporate those feelings, then they're more accessible to us when we can step back and pretend we're watching a movie. And as those pleasant feelings emerge, we can feel them in our body, and that allows the parasympathetic system to kick in. We can relax our muscles, and it's not that we're denying our negative thoughts, but we're allowing them to melt away and to choose the happiness that comes, that evolves as a result of the discipline that we're using. And recognizing the good in ourselves and others and the world and the future we can make together takes us into an even further part of that responsive mode. Taking this in and focusing on this for at least 15 to 20 seconds, as Joan says, allows the brain to reform, that neuroplasticity. We can ask ourselves, when we find ourselves reacting negatively, is this reaction to something that's outside of my control? Lots of times the media kicks this in. Worth the stress that is putting on my body, mind, and spirit. And when you come away with that idea, you can recognize that you're in charge of what happens to your body, mind, and spirit. There are two researchers, Mark Waldman from Loyola Marymount and Andrew Newberg, who's a physician at Jefferson in Philadelphia. I'm wondering if Carrie knows him. And they've written a lot about maintaining a healthy brain. And I want to quote from an article that I've just read that they wrote. Evolution has given us the neurological ability to be optimistic and hopeful about the future, even when there is no concrete evidence to support our beliefs. and this is from their research, but we need to exercise it daily, having faith in humanity and especially in ourselves. Our new #1 strategy, these researchers, for maintaining a healthy brain, based on our latest research on brain network therapy, is awareness. If we're not fully aware of how our beliefs, behaviors, and faith affect our lives and the lives of others, then we cannot access the spirituality circuits in the brain essential for neurological balance and health. So there's a lot of wonderful research going on in this area now. Okay, Joan, do you want to add anything before we get into the reflective questions?
No, Sue handled, I think we complemented each other really well. I think the heal process to me is a bit like meditation, but it's a shortened, it's very intentional. I want to make that, it's not really like the different forms of meditation that Selena taught. This is very intentional to really develop that neuroplasticity of your brain. So this is why I resonate as a nurse, and Sue and I both resonate, because it's a heal process and we all want to heal ourselves in whatever way we can. So I mean, this has been fun, Sue.
Okay. We have reflective questions for discussion. The first one that Joan and I thought we would like you to be thinking about is, are there any of your core needs of safety, satisfaction, and connection not being fully met at this time? And would you raise your hand and talk about that from your experience? Any hands up, Marilyn?
No, not the moment.
Okay. Well, Joan and I can, and certainly all the faculty can think of times when these core needs are not being fully met. And I see Harvey would like to say anything. Can you unmute, Harvey?
The sympathetic nervous system evolved to deal with physical threat. It has never evolved past that. Most of our modern day threats are mental, emotional, spiritual, social, up until now. Now we have a real physical threat, which leaves us very legitimately, probably for one of the first times in modern life, except when the H-bomb was, we were hiding under desks as kids because of the H-bomb. But this virus actually touches our primal design of the sympathetic nervous system because it's a physical threat. You can't see it, which makes it even worse. It's like an existential sword hanging over your neck. And so in the face of that, there's a level of sympathetic activity out in the public, out in, certainly in me, because I'm at a vulnerable age and I care. And it's constantly there. And it's the first time in my life, actually, that I can think of where there has been perpetually now for months a physical threat that's triggering my primal sympathetic nervous system. It's not, you know, engaging the nervous system from these other areas. And it requires attention constantly to tone down and balance that sympathetic nervous system. So this is important. The piece that goes along with that, and this is stuff you've talked about, we talk about having this choice to respond. And choice resides in the cortex. And functional MRIs show us that when we're not calm, when we get aroused, alarmed, particularly fearful, we're not living in the cortex. We're reacting. So we have to constantly practice being in some state of calm, however we do it, when we're not actively threatened, not when we're out and about in a crowd not wearing masks. We have to practice at times when we're safety so we can do this pre-planning. What do I do when I'm challenged out there and my brain wants to react and take over? Because this whole negative bias comes from the brain's, again, primal ability to look at worst case scenario, because if you would deal with that, you'll always survive. The brain always goes negative when things are vague, because that's how you survive. You pay attention to the possible worst case. So when it's not threatened, when we're not so vulnerable, is when we need to practice these skills with meditation, awareness, quiet, focusing our attention, so that when we do get really challenged, because the challenges now are physical and real among all the other challenges, we will then be able to take that space and move into a space of action rather than reaction. So this has all come together. And the virus, I hadn't thought about this before, the virus is the first time in my life that there's an ongoing physical threat that my sympathetic nervous system knows how to respond to continuously. And so it requires a lot of effort and energy to deal with it. I have nothing else to say.
That's helpful, Harvey.
And Harvey, to build on that, that's where the peace, because peace is that emotion to do with safety. And so when I find myself, when I'm turning, I really try to maintain that peace of mind. That's when I engage in my 7 whispers a lot, because it's that maintaining that peace of mind that's going to get that sympathetic system to tone down.
Yeah. And a gratitude journal, by the way, is something we've used for the last 29 years in our cancer group. And we ask people to do it at night, and it becomes a practice. And then they start, at the end of their day, they reflect, well, what good things happened to me today? What can I be grateful for? And it helps sleep, and it's another practice that leads to safety.
Yeah, there's research out of University of Pennsylvania that if you do write in a gratitude at night, especially, you will sleep better. And actually, you'll develop more of that Teflon kind of plastic brain. Thank you, Harvey, very much.
There is one question in the chat related to this. It says, how do you act when someone pushes you to change into their direction when you don't have the capacity and you don't want to? So I think that feeling of threat is there in that question.
I think Carol summed it up beautifully and I do the same thing. I become curious. So what's going on here? You know, and I sometimes will say to somebody, I know this isn't your intent to get me angry, but this is the impact right now on me. So let's talk about this. What's going on? And usually it's got nothing to do with work related, it's personal, or this whole COVID threat has really thrown people into a tizzy. And Harvey's right, if their sympathetic system is constantly on overdrive and they're in this reactive mode and always in this red zone, they're going to try to push those buttons. And depending on my mood and what's going on with me. So when Sue talked about, you know, trying to see that as a detached observer, Sue, speak more about that, because that was key there, watching it like a movie.
I can relate to being in critical. Joan and I share a critical care nursing background, and I was a director of critical care nursing, and lots of times I'd have interactions with the physicians, and we wouldn't be able to see eye to eye. They'd be trying to push me in a certain manner to not to allow staff to be able to practice at their full capacity. And what I found was that in that situation, if I can detach and find common ground by focusing on what we both want, and that's better patient care, And when I focus on the patient and what's best for the patient, finding common ground becomes easier. And then many times we can come to some kind of agreement or agree to disagree. And then we have to go forward from there. I don't know whether that helps.
There is one other comment on the chat that's related to this and the feelings that are going on right now. It says, as a case manager, I'm required to meet my clients in the community. At times, we're meeting in densely populated urban downtown areas where only a handful are wearing masks and social distancing. My clients feel my existential angst. I don't feel present, and I arrive home shaken and exhausted. I try to process my feelings and find my views poisoned with feelings that I'm disposable or unprotected.
Absolutely. This is a very difficult situation to be in, and I can truly relate to this in the sense that I found myself reading everything I could about COVID so that I would be prepared and I could keep myself safe and my family safe, my grandchildren safe when we went out into nature. And what I found was I was going into a survival mode and being pretty aggressive about people who were shouting and not wearing masks in my space. And when I stepped back and realized that when I'm in that vulnerable, aggressive mode, I'm not acting, I'm reacting, and I'm forgetting to trust that I'm being led, that source will guide me, that my intuition will let me know when I'm vulnerable and I need to change. I don't have to be so hyper vigilant. And then when I can pull back from that hypervigilance and allow myself to be more relaxed, then I can be more present for my grandchildren who I'm with. And yes, of course, I want to protect, but my presence with them is much more important than me being the policeman for their safety.
I'd like to add to this that I think when you are in this state, you realize that you're very self-aware because you say you arrive home shaken and exhausted. This is when you have to be extra good to yourself.
Yes.
So watch your diet, make sure you can try to get some sleep. This is not the time you want to drink excessive coffee or any kind of stimulants, because your sympathetic nervous system, as Harvey would say, is in overdrive because you're exhausted and you're home shaken. I mean, you come home shaken, as you say. So this is when you have to be good to yourself. You have to, and I think this awareness, the breath, the breathing is going to be so important here. Then we all have to make choices. I know that when I've been in jobs that I have felt unsafe, or I have had, I'm not satisfied and there's no connection, I have to decide whether or not I can leave. And that only you can answer that. I can't answer that, but that's how I sort of sort through. It's, I often say to myself, how do I want to inhabit my days? You may not have a choice right now because of the job market and we have to pay bills and all of that. But I would say do take care of yourself. It's really critical.
I think it's important for us to realize that we're in the midst of very extenuating circumstances, unprecedented circumstances. And we often don't have a clear way of responding, especially if we haven't been practicing meditation or practicing centering or practicing how to deal with conflict at all levels. So what I'd like to do is invite all of you who are with us to recall an incident in which you reacted in a way that might have contributed to a less than optimal outcome. Can you go back to an incident in which you reacted rather than acted, in the red zone rather than the green zone? Can you think of what factors contributed to your response? Joan talked about being exhausted and then treating a loved one poorly? What factors contributed to your response if you contributed to a less than optimal outcome? And then how would you describe a redo of that scenario? How would you do it differently?
I was wondering to ask a question. How about an example of when someone has been taking in the good? Can someone give us an example of taking in the good?
We have one last reflective question and then we'll close up. We won't have time to address it, but would you put up the fourth slide, the fourth question, Marilyn, please? What has yet to be addressed for you to further your ability to choose to modify your response from reaction to action, and responding from choice? So we'd like to leave you with that reflective question for you to address personally, maybe just before you write your gratitude list before you go to sleep tonight. But we want to end with a quote from Rick Hanson's book. So everybody close your eyes and remember that progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. This is from Rick Hanson. Imagine a world in which a critical mass of human brains, 100 million, a billion more, spend most, if not all, of each day in the responsive mode. Eventually, there would come a tipping point, a qualitative alteration in the course of human history. People would still lock their doors at night, still reach for a profit, and still disagree and compete with one another. They would still need to be guided by values and virtues. But the ancient internal fires of fear, frustration, and heartache would be banked low or extinguished for lack of fuel. Remember how you feel yourself when you are resting in a basic sense of peace, contentment, love. Remember what it's like to be with others who are also resting in this state of being. Imagine what your family would be like, your workplace and your community too, if most everyone in it were centered in the responsive mode, the green setting of the brain. Take it a step further and imagine how businesses would treat the people working in them, how the healthcare industry would function differently, how governments would operate, and how nations might treat one another. This is not a utopian vision. The responsive mode of the brain is our home base. For our sake and our children's children's sake, I hope we come home soon. And that concludes our remarks for today.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that lovely comment that you left us with, an invitation to our home, coming home. And when I think of that coming home or that state of mind that is basic, natural, the beginning of our existence, then I can't think of anything else other than a silence mind. And I'd like to spend a few minutes, not perhaps even in reflecting, because even in reflecting, we can tend to overuse our mind and intellect and be critical or judgmental. But that space that we were talking about, where there is a stimulus and there is a response, that space in between, could we replicate that space willingly, volitionally, and under controlled circumstances? And that space is really about being home. Being home in an environment of peace. The peace that doesn't just stand for lack of chaos or noise or even movement, but a peace that stands for stillness, calmness, clarity, confidence, compassion, contentment. Is it possible that we can feel all of this or any one of these at any given moment? Because that's what coming home means. To an original way of being and doing and speaking. No conditioning or preconditioning. But the purest feelings that are almost part of my nature. I'm able to project that into everything and everyone. In fact, this pandemic that we are facing, this situation, the threat of the virus, is probably the strongest stimulus that we have had collectively in ages. And if we take this space of silence in between coming home, to who I am, to who we are, what would be the response? What is it asking from us? When we know from the innate wisdom of our being that we are spiritual and eternal and always secure, always connected with the source. What is the world asking of us? Yes, the external is important. Safety, precaution, guidelines. All out of love. Pure love. And not out of insecurity or fear. And this feeling of protecting will spread out as a wave into the world, as waves of compassion and love. And perhaps even reach the virus community. They say love wins. And this is our chance to be it. And act from love. This is home base. And it's time for us all to come home to who we are. And from this place of being home, I'm sure there will be solution upon solution that we can create and resolve situations. In love and out of love for all things, all beings, starting with myself. And this is what God would want for us. To bring us together in love. Om Shanti. And as a takeaway blessing from this session, a blessing on responsibility. My heart is open and light, able to respond to every moment without judgment, thereby building bridges towards a different future. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. So we have come to just about almost the end of the journey today. And I like that last question, the color, just hinted at listening to the conversations in this past session, the question of what is the word asking of us? And I was thinking, linking it back to the question that I posed in the beginning, what does attitude have to do with it? Why are we talking about attitude as healthcare professionals? So I'm feeling like the takeaway for me is that as healthcare professionals, we are playing a role. No, we are playing a role that we call doctor or nurse or social worker or whatever, and that's just a role. But in reality, coming back home to the self is going beyond the role and looking at myself as a responsible human being in the world today. And what is the world asking of all of us as responsible human beings? And so looking at our attitudes is what it's all about. No, what is the attitude that I am growing, I'm nurturing? What is the seed that I'm sowing to allow that attitude to grow, so that that attitude then can begin to help me to navigate my way through all the scenes and sceneries in the world, no matter what is happening, because based on the attitude that I'm holding is going to dictate how I respond. And am I responding coming from a place of truth, of wholeness, from a place of where I need to go back to give to the world what the world is asking of me. So I just wanted to say that. But of course, we have come to a part in this session where we usually always, at the end of all our programs together, at all our retreats, we come to what we call the closing, the what do we call it? The checkout, the checkout. And I was thinking, you know, that we have listened a lot today. There's been so much that we all, I'm hoping that we all have put in our knapsacks to take. We've listened to a lot. We've heard a lot. We've reflected, we've meditated together, we've shared together. And on this aspect of attitude, on this aspect of how does my awareness affect my attitude, on this aspect of how does subtle energies impact my attitude, on this aspect of what it is that enable me to act rather than reacting. We've heard so much. And I'm sure we probably haven't had enough time to reflect on everything we have heard. And so we're going to be taking much of this back home with us to reflect on. But of course, we are going to, at this point, just to spend some time together, just to look back at what we've heard and what it means for me as I move forward from this moment, what it means and how can I take what I've heard back out into the life, my everyday life, and also back out into my work life. And so what we're going to do now, I'm going to invite all of us to take a little time to do a little bit of reflection. And so I'm going to be asking a couple of questions. And the first question, and this first question is not necessarily for you to give an answer. And it's wonderful, it would be wonderful if you can share. But it is for you to think about it for yourself, definitely, and take that back with you. We can share that here, and I'd love to hear from you. And I'm sure we'd all love to hear from each other. But this first question is, having listened to all that you've listened to, heard that all you've heard, what is still left as a question in my mind? Something that I'd still like to explore and understand. Is there anything? So take a moment just to think about it. Is there anything that is burning in your hearts that you are still kind of not clear about? Not that we can necessarily give you an answer, but you need to go back into yourself and allow that to emerge, go into that place of silence through reflection and let that come. Or if you want to pose it here today, and I'm going to invite any one of the faculty that have shared so far, if there's a question that comes up on that question, if you can feel free to respond to it. So let's take just a moment to think. What's still left as a question in my mind that I'd still like to hear about? And Marilyn, would you manage the chat for me?
Yep. So one question has come. How do you react when certain partner pushes your red button and meditation and big breath in and out is not working anymore?
Is anyone out there who, Joan has a waving hand.
I walk out of the room. I do. I just extricate myself from it. I just have to walk away. I take a time out.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, I would also say, you know, if I feel that I am being burdened by somebody's responses or reactions or behaviors, and I am so burdened by it, I probably need to ask myself, while I walk out of the room, and I'm out of the room, I have to make sure that I didn't take it with me out of the room, because sometimes we can walk away from the scene, but we've taken it with us and we really haven't walked away from it. So we also need to ask ourselves, what is it in me that allow me to become so overwhelmed by somebody else's behavior? Because a lot of time it's our wanting to control or wanting to control somebody else, wanting to control what another person should be like, because we have expectations of ourselves, desires of ourselves, of other people. And when I can't have my way, and this is one of the things that desires will bring and expectations will bring, it will bring me pain, because somebody's going to be who they are and they have a right to be who they are. And if I am allowing it to bother me to that extent of my experiencing sorrow or pain from it, I need to ask myself, what do I want from somebody else? What is it I'm expecting? And why do I have a need for that control? Because it's usually because our egos are very much dictating to us that I need to have what I want to have from that person. That person is supposed to be the way I want them to be. And so even when I walk out the room, which is maybe one of the best things to do in the moment, but when I walk out the room, it shouldn't really just finish there.
No, and thank you, Carmen. What I ask myself when I walk out of the room, and I probably should have finished this thought, is what am I feeling and why am I feeling that way? I always ask myself, what am I feeling? And if I'm feeling so angry, I have to then say, why am I feeling this way? And if it continues, what's going to happen next? And what can I do to control it? And that's that self-awareness. One has to reflect, but I usually have to remove myself because when I stay in the room, it's that emotional contagion. You're going to take it up. So I just have to extricate myself.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joan. All right. Okay, so does anybody else want to share? You don't have to share. It can be something new with you, but if you want to share, that is fine. On this question, what is it that what is still left unanswered for you? What do you still need to explore more? And that exploration can go beyond today, can take you way into the future, just trying to get a handle on where am I in my own stage and why am I there? Where am I with my attitudes and why am I there? How can I move from the attitudes that I'm in to another place that is helpful, that is beneficial, that is healing? So is there anyone else who wants to share anything else on that? And if not, that's fine. But there I'm going to pose another 2 questions and I put both of them up together because I want you to think about them. The next one, there are 2 questions. So think about them and you can respond to either of them or both, either of them or both. What did I find most interesting in this session today that I can take back to my life and work to help me sustain healing attitude? This one question. What did I find most interesting that I may be able to take back to kind of work with, to practice with, to explore more, to experiment with any one thing. Or this other question is, what do I see that I need to do to enhance in myself attitude that will always benefit the other and benefit myself? What do I need to do? What do I need to engage in now to change where I am so that my attitude can really be beneficial and or healing? Take a moment to reflect on that. Would you like to hear from you on this?
Harvey, I saw your hand go up for a second. Did you want to share?
I've heard a lot of things today that have really deepened my understanding of many things, including fascia and its function, including the wisdom of our ancestors, including all kinds of things. The simplest thing, though, that I come away with now, the thing that is so simple, is that what I need to do is to remember about coming home. I just need to remember about coming home. That sums it up so beautifully, and it's simple. It isn't a big, but it's a practice. And it's funny because when I physically go to Peace Village, I always feel like I'm coming home. I've talked about this in my family a lot. There's something about that whole thing, but the concept of coming home to the essence of my own point of light. And I don't have to create my point of light. I just have to remember that I have it, that it's in there. And that remembering is much easier than creating. It's much easier. I just have to consistently go there. So thank you so much for that.
I'd like to comment on that, Harvey, because a lot of times people say they have difficulty with meditating. And I think the reason for that is that we think we have to do this big creation in meditation. And all that what the Brahma Kumaris teaches is, rather than trying to do all that and create stuff, just remember. So we call it remembrance rather than meditating most of the times, because remembering is very easy. It's saying that's who you are, that's what's there, that's what's always there. And we forgot. So just remember. Come home, just remember. That's much easier than trying to create something that you don't think is there.
There's another comment in the chat. I will try to find something praiseworthy in my very first interactions with every person to set the tone of my engagement. It's a very nice practical takeaway. This song filled my heart with longing for the place of joy from the morning. And then I thought we can also give blood to Mother Earth every time we plant anything with positive intention and love. This power can be used to heal our physical home Earth. Thank you. Beautiful.
Okay. All right. We are only 8 minutes away from closing time. I have something I'd like to share. It's a little piece of reading. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I found it very inspiring as we were talking about, going home, going back to that space between the stimulus and the response, going back to the place within myself where all things get born. And sometimes that's where it grows and comes out in whether it's reaction or not reaction, action or reaction. And so I thought I would just read this for you as a gift. And it is from Doughty, who was one of the latest head of the Brahma Kumaris. And she left her body about 6 months ago. One of the wisest women I have met. And so she left her body at the age of 104, but fully alive, fully alert, and still giving and giving and giving. And so the piece that I'm reading is called Your Inner Sanctuary of Silence. There's a part of you that is perfect and pure. It is untouched by the less than perfect characteristics you've acquired in a less than perfect world. It is filled with divine qualities and therefore in a constant state of resourcefulness and well-being. Its total absence of conflict and negativity of any sort makes this place of this part of you a still point, a deep, enriching experience of silence. Make time to practice reaching this inner place of silence. It brings untold benefit. First, it allows you to manage your thoughts better. You will find, for example, that there is no need to think as much as you do, but simply sitting in silence will emerge effortlessly much of all that you need. Second, the experience of silence releases you from the grip of your negative programming and conditioning. You will more easily experience the truth of your inner peace and dignity. This further aids the mind in remaining focused and capable. And third, the power of silence can be shared. As you increase your experience of silence, your power can help those without power to continue in their efforts to self-development and experience of peace. Your stock of silence plus an additional stock of true, powerful thoughts will help others go beyond the limited into the unlimited and the divine. It feels so good to go beyond in this way, to leave behind thoughts and speech and become quiet for a little while. It's so refreshing and nourishing. It's habit forming. Love for spiritual introversion, solitude, and silence complement your life in such a beautiful way. And this, of course, is in the source of it is Companion of God, Words and Wisdom of Doughty Janki. Om Shanti. Kala, do you have anything else you want to share at this moment with the group before we do our last song? We have a little song I'd love to share with you, a recorded song.
Gratitude, and more gratitude. My first gratitude is, of course, to the one and only one that started all of this, that instilled this idea of the power of thought and change and attitude and all of that. So we call him Baba, Father. My gratitude also to the founder of the Brahma Kumaris, who was able to channel a lot of that message that came from that source. We call him Brahma Baba also. My gratitude to Doughty Janki, whose words of wisdom you just read. She was a great inspiration till the last minute of her life. She still continues to be, I think, for the work of health and healthcare. That's why the Janki Foundation came about. She was a woman full of compassion, and she would go all out to people to help people in pain. And I do feel this coronavirus has a lot to do with her leaving. She is really helping for us all to rise to the occasion to help the souls of the world. So that, yes, lots and lots of gratitude to the design team that has stayed with us for almost 20 years and, you know, continues to only get better every time we meet on the Zoom. It only is better and better. I've just enjoyed every minute of being with them. And of course, today was exclusive. And so thanks to every one of you for your thoughts, your participation, and especially your presence. And a big thanks to technology that's made it all possible for us to meet like this. And last but not the least, thanks to this very, very significant time that we're all in, which I believe is a big gift to us. It's a grace time. I believe that all of what we have shared today, I think is really pointing finger to the fact that, you know, this is a chance for us to prepare. You know, of course, we have seen many scenes already, but perhaps more scenes to come. And it's only giving us a signal of how more to prepare or how deeper to prepare from the spiritual point of view. So really, really, my thanks to the time that we are in, where we are still able to meet like this and talk like this and practice like this. And I love to be leaving this session with what Harvey said. It's not that we have to do any hard work or laborious work. It's just very easy, loving remembrance of who we are and who we belong to, who's looking out for us. Thank you. Looking forward to a lot more.
So we have a beautiful song that I'd like to leave us with, and then I'll make some final announcements. Can we have that song, please?
Tall branches are hanging off the edge. Across the ground lay my hopes and dreams. Walking across with my bare feet, holding my breath to unfold the mystery. I'm waiting for the sun to rise. I'm waiting to shine bright. I want to stand tall like a pillar to the moon. I want to see it all, to let my wisdom bloom. The stillness of my mind lets me stand tall like a pillar to the moon, like a pillar to the moon, like a pillar to the moon, like a pillar to the moon. Gleaming lights on the palm of my hands, breathing new life to my hopes and dreams. My smiling face accepts the reality. I am strong and I am free. I'm waiting for the sun to rise. I'm like a pillar to the moon.
And finally, thank you. And finally, thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for being who you are. Thank you all for the grand work that you're all doing out there, and for just wanting to be the best that you can be, so that you can be the best you can be in the world, and you can do the best you are capable of doing. So thanks again to everyone. And I need not say thanks to the team. That is understood, right? So just a couple of last announcements that I'd like to just, can we show that? Okay. Again, for those, if you were not here before, just to let you know, the sessions have been recorded, so everybody who's on the list with the correct email address will get the recordings. We will send them out to you. We have a bunch of handouts which we will send you in the mail, in an email. We are asking of you to give us a feedback. We've heard a lot from you, but if you give us a written feedback, that would be wonderful. We did send you the link, but we will send it to you again. Upcoming programs, we have the Sunday evening initiative that we do with healthcare professionals every week, and it's called the Heal Well, Feel Well Lounge. It's meditation for self-care for healthcare professionals. It's every Sunday evening at 8 to 8:45. If you've never been on that list before and you registered for this retreat, then we automatically put your name on the list. Okay, so you will get the invitation from us again. Anything else? What else was there? Just these are resources that we showed before, and we will be sending you a list of all the resources that you can tap into. But just the last word on contributions. If you do want to make a contribution to the work that we are doing, the Point of Life Foundation and the Brahma Kumaris, you can send it to the peacevillage-retreat.org donations, and we will send this information out to you again as well. So thank you all for joining today. Thank you for choosing to give yourself this retreat. Thank you for sharing your time.